Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about ear infections in dogs. So specifically dogs, less so in cats, which we'll do in a different session. So firstly, if your dog gets an ear infection and they've never had an ear infection before and they just happen to have an ear infection today and you go down the vet and you get it treated, that's fine. It's just a one-off, hopefully, and that's the end of it. Today, specifically, what I was hoping to talk about was the situation where you get one dog who just gets an ear infection again and again and again. So each time it flares up, it's all painful, swollen, horrible. Touch the dog, they cry out and they squeak. Sometimes it's smelly, sometimes it discharges. But the pattern is generally that you go down to the vets, they give you some treatment, usually some drops or some tablets or injections or all three. And the usual pattern again is that the infection goes away relatively easily in most cases. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer and you may have to run some tests to get it sorted out, but basically it goes away fairly easily. The problem then, the trend you may have noticed, is a few weeks or days sometimes even after finishing the treatment, you start noticing a problem again. The ear gets a bit smelly, the dog's holding the head a bit, they're scratching at it, or when you give them a bit of love and attention, you bump the ear and they cry out. And then you think, oh, I've got to go to the vets again. So you put it off and you put it off and you put it off until you just can't put it off anymore. And you go to the vet again who goes, yep, same thing, same as last time. We'll give it the same treatment as last time. And this pattern repeats until you get more and more fed up and the visits to the vet get longer and longer and longer, which means the poor dog has got periods longer and longer and longer between appointments where he's actually getting some help. So the first question we should ask ourselves is, what the hell? Why is my dog getting recurrent ear infections where my friend's dog or my auntie Mabel's dog is not getting repeated ear infections? What is going on? Can it be just that they're unlucky? And the answer is no, probably not. True uncomplicated ear infections in dogs, meaning you just got an ear infection, you were just unlucky, it's a bug that got in there and we can treat it and blast it and make it go away. True simple infections like that are very, very rare. 99 times out of 100, if you keep getting the infections again and again and again, there's an underlying cause, and we haven't addressed the underlying cause, which is obviously why it keeps coming back again and again. So what is the underlying cause? And the frustration there again is 90% of the time with an underlying cause, it is that the dog has an underlying condition, typically an allergy, which causes inflammation in the ear canal, and that's what brings about the secondary infection. So what I mean the dog has an allergy? Well, dogs have allergies just like you and I do, and they react to very much the same things that you and I do. So they react to grasses and pollens and just basically gubbins in the air, but they manifest their allergy symptoms differently to us. So as human beings, if there's grasses or pollens in the air and we breathe it in, it does what you would obviously expect, which is to say it causes, if you're allergic, it causes a reaction where it goes in. So you get hay fever or asthma and that's the manifestation of your allergy. If you're asthmatic, you'll know that you get asthma infections, and if you're asthma reactions, and as and when the reactions occur, they may become secondarily infected. So you may get a secondary infection, a bronchitis or a chest infection, and then you're left with treating not just your allergy, not just your asthma, but also the secondary infection. So dogs are no different. So they're allergic to generally what we are. Again, if you tested yourself and your dog and you were both allergic, you'd pretty much get the same list of allergens in the air. And an allergy to allergens, which is the thing that sets off the allergy, allergens in the air, if you have that allergy, we would call you atopic. So it simply means you're allergic to gubbins in the air rather than you're coming in contact with stuff like a contact allergy or a food allergy. So the concept of hay fever is a good one worth exploring now. Hay fever is traditionally called hay fever because you got it in the hay making season when people were threshing hay, so throwing it up in the air, and all the gubbins was going in the air, and people with allergies were reacting that time of year. So it was a very predictable seasonal event associated with not just seasons but certain activities. Nowadays, True hay fever that occurs with that sort of specific seasonality is quite uncommon. And that's because if you're allergic to one thing, you're generally going to be allergic to many things. And that means allergic to different things in different seasons. So you're allergic to pollens pollens of sort of trees and grasses in the spring and the summer months. Then you've got the residual pollens and beginning of fungal spores in autumn. And then in winter, for many people and dogs, winter's even more of an allergy season than the other seasons, and that's because if you're allergic to one thing, you're generally going to be allergic to a lot, as we've said, and specifically indoor triggers would be the concept of house dust. Now, house dust is not sort of if you run your finger along a surface. House dust is not the dust that you'd pick up on your finger. It's a far more gross concept than that. We all shed about 1 million dead skin cells every day, and those dead skin cells fall on the floor, and something has to be done with them. Otherwise, if you walk around in your house, you'd be knee deep in dead skin. So there are little microscopic bugs called dust mites and storage mites, which physically eat your dead skin, and they're a good thing. They're microscopic, we don't see them. If you're not allergic to them, you don't bother them, and everyone's happy. The problem is when you become allergic to the dust mites, because then when winter comes along and it's colder, so you close the doors, you close the windows, the house isn't ventilating anywhere near as well as it was. You get a build-up of this microscopic population of dust mites. And if you're not allergic, you'd say, oh, this is lovely and cozy. If you're allergic, you'd go, oh, bloody hell, this is the end, because that's what's going to trigger and aggravate your allergy. So back to the human model. So when you get the allergy trigger in your nose, for example, the lining of your nose becomes inflamed and your nose swells shut and you feel all bunged up and congested. In dogs, exactly the same thing happens in their ears. So in the ears, so effectively, if you imagine the ear is just a cone of cartilage going into the head, and inside of the cone of cartilage is a cone of skin. And ear infections and ear problems are really just a manifestation usually of a greater skin problem. The reason it amplifies in the ears particularly is that you've got a lot of skin. Imagine you've taken a whole roll of skin, you've rolled it into a tube and shoved it into your head on either side. If you took the lining out of your ear canal and laid it flat, that would be a lot of skin. So you've got a lot of skin condensed into a small space, and so any reaction in that skin would be amplified. So you've got the skin within the cone of cartilage, so the one sitting inside the other. The skin becomes inflamed. It can't swell outwards because the cartilage hasn't got any give in it, so it holds it tight. So the only way the skin can swell is to swell inwards like that. And so effectively what then happens is you compress. So instead of having an open ear canal, you have ear canal compresses, and it turns the ear canal into a warm, dark, moist, humid place with no ventilation. Now, we all have bugs living in all over our bodies, inside and outside. The most common bugs that live in our ears are yeasts. So doggy yeasts are different to human yeasts. I think we're all familiar with the concept of yeasts causing thrush, for example, in human beings, which can happen in your mouth or anywhere. In dogs, they have a different kind of yeast called Malassezia pachydermatitis, which lives naturally in their ear canals. And as long as there's ventilation and the ear is breathing, then there's no bother. My cat's now joining in here. Flea, go away. So as long as the ear canal is open and it's breathing and it's ventilated, the yeasts that live in your ear are kept under control by your immune system. But as soon as the allergy comes and it causes the ear canals to swell shut, then you get a wonderful growth environment for these yeasts, and they go through a population explosion. And you get this sort of sticky, sort of peanut butter mixed with butter sort of spread that accumulates in the ears. And if you have a sniff of it, it smells like old laundry or smelly old socks. In that case, just treating the infection, the yeast infection, is not going to achieve anything. And again, to use an analogy, imagine you've got mildew growing in your bathroom. Where did that mildew come from? It was always there. But as soon as you start taking hot baths and hot showers and the room isn't ventilated, it creates the ideal growth environment for these bugs, and they start growing. So the mildew in your bathroom, or the mold in your bathroom, is the analog to the yeast infection in your ear. So it didn't come from anywhere, it was always there, but you just created the environment. So you can either in your bathroom focus all your energies on getting cleaners and cleaning the mildew every day, cleaning it, wiping it out, and the next day it grows back and you have to address it again, which is what you're doing if, in effect, when you're just treating with, blooming cat, with antibiotics for the ear problem. So unless you, in your bathroom, unless you open a door, open a window, put an extractor fan or something in, you are going to spend your whole life treating the mildew, which is the equivalent of the infection in your ear. So if you, as soon as you put an extractor fan in, you create the ventilation and you no longer find yourself having to treat the mildew all the time. Ears are just the same. So instead of chasing the infections that keep happening because the ear canals are swollen shut, what you want to do is get one step ahead of the problem and keep the ear canals open. So how do you do that? You block the allergy. How do you block the allergy? Several ways of doing that. You can, traditionally, you can do some tests, the old skin prick tests along yourself, or blood tests, work out exactly what it is that you're allergic to, and then try and avoid those allergens, which is impractical. Short of moving to Iceland and living in a drafty hut somewhere where it's freezing cold and blowy wind, you're just not going to get away from the typical allergens. So short of selling up and moving, you can't avoid the allergens very successfully. What you can do, you can try desensitization injections where on the basis of your tests you know what you're allergic to, and then you inject that into yourself in increasing amounts over years, quite literally, and see if you can sort of desensitize yourself, which is to say get your body used to the allergens, the things that trigger allergy. I think it's reasonably successful in human beings. I'm just very disappointed by the results in dogs. I find it an expensive exercise, and I can think of maybe one or two cases where it helped a bit. So realistically, desensitization just doesn't seem to work. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with medications. And there are several to choose from. You can try human antihistamines, which largely is a complete waste of time. They have very little benefit in dogs. And the ones that do seem to help them are the ones that have the side effect of making you a little bit drowsy. So in fact, you haven't made the dog less itchy, you've just made them too stoned to scratch themselves, which I don't think is a great solution. One up from that, you can consider the use of steroids. Steroids are a lot of pros and cons. So when we say steroids, we don't mean anabolic steroids like the athletes and the bodybuilders abuse. What we mean are glucocorticosteroids, which are basically anti-inflammatories, anti-allergy agents produced by our own bodies, but just they figured out how to make them in a lab, and we should take more of them, if you like, to get a greater effect. So pros and cons. Pros, they're fabulous, they work quickly, they're very predictably effective, they work 99% of the time, and they're cheap as chips. Cons is long-term, they will have side effects. Not devastating side effects, but basically over the long term, you'll get a big fat pot belly, you'll get a fat body, skinny legs, you'll lose muscle, you'll use muscle tone over the long term, and you'll drink a lot and you'll eat a lot. And if you're drinking a lot, you're going to pee a lot, which means peeing on the floor overnight. So steroids, decent short-term choice, not a great long-term choice. Then there are three other products that one can choose from, modern products, which have been around several years now, which effectively do what steroids do, but without the side effects. So what do? They tell the allergy cells in your body to stop reacting to the allergy. So they act like a steroid or an antihistamine, but they're not a steroid, they're not an antihistamine. They are very clever products. So typically, one of them that I like the most is called Apoquel. So it's not a plug, I'm not sponsored by anyone, just it is a great drug for these purposes. And it's an elegant solution in the sense that it targets the allergy cells in the skin. Remember, the lining of the ear is just skin, rather than blasting the whole of the body, which some of the other drugs perhaps will do. The downside, they're expensive. They're much more expensive than the steroids. The upside, of course, is they relieve your dog from its distress and its suffering, because remember, in between these visits when you're going to the vet, it's not like the dog was every time you go to the vet, it only just got the problem yesterday. Usually these have been going on quite some time, and we've just not been aware of it. And the dog is walking around with this inflamed, painful, congested feeling, which is no fun for them at all. So by committing to these medications, it is a lifelong medication. Sometimes we can get away with tactical medications. So if we can identify that certain times of year are very much worse than others, and remember that can be spring, summer, autumn or winter, any one of those. If you have specifically a bias to reacting certain times of the year, great, we'll treat you at those times of the year and maybe give you a rest from the medications other times of the year. But most of us, and I'm one of the allergic ones, most of us are allergic to something in every season. So it's an all year round thing, and it's so nice to be rid of that feeling of just congestion and discomfort. And I generally try not to sell this to people. I say, look, you go home, try it for 2 weeks, excuse me, and then come back and tell me what you think. And I would say 90+% of people will come back and say, oh my word, the dog's life is transformed. The dogs become much more cheerful, much more interactive, much happier, and just the whole quality of life has been improved. So it's a medication and an ideology that pretty much sells itself, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And by doing this, by controlling the long-term allergy, you control that inflammation, so you control the narrowing in the ear canal, and you don't keep getting the yeast infections. Just like in your bathroom again, if you put the extractor fan on, you're not going to be on your hands and knees cleaning the room again and again and again. Of course, sometimes we are indeed unlucky, and the dog will get a nastier bug than just the normal bugs that live in the ear canal. Generally, you know you're dealing with those. They're exquisitely painful. The ear canal is often ulcerated and bleeding, and the discharge is often a horrible yellowy green, sort of mucky color, very smelly, and again, extremely painful. One of the most common bugs we find then in those situations is Pseudomonas. It's an absolute swine of a bug because it's multi-resistant, so it's resistant to a lot of antibiotics. So you really need to stick a swab, which looks like a cotton bud, into the ear, swab it out, send it off to the lab, ask them to tell you exactly what bug you've got in there and exactly which antibiotics will work, and then just blast the hell out of the thing and don't cut the treatment short. I would normally treat with the antibiotics until the problem is gone and then do another week on top of that. Why? Because this is a nasty bug, and it's a clever bug, which is to say the antibiotics, initially that will kill it. It can often figure those antibiotics out, and then sometimes as little as a week, it can become resistant to those antibiotics. So that antibiotic no longer works because the bug has evolved and adapted to resist it. So once you get this thing on the run, kill it. Then in other dogs who get recurrent ear infections, it can be neither allergy nor neither a serious bug. Some of them are just conformational, which means you get these dogs with the long sort of flappy ears, typically like spaniels. So they've got these great big heavy ears flapping down over the ear canal, and that of itself creates a warm, dark, moist place, particularly the ones who like to go swimming because they splash around in the water. There's a lot of wet, and that translates into humidity, and they may get secondary infections. But really, those are in the minority. So even if I see a spaniel who does like swimming, and he does have the big fat floppy spaniel ears, I would still be very, very suspicious that he has an underlying allergy. And generally, if you do have the underlying allergy, you're manifesting not just as ear problems, but you'll also have the little rhyme they teach you to try and remember is you have itchy ears, rears, and feet. So basically, your ears are a problem, your bum bothers you, so you're either licking and chewing at your bum, or you're doing that that inelegant thing that dogs do, and they sort of drag their bums along the ground. I had one client once describe it as, my dog's doing yoga. What he meant was, my dog's allergic and has an itchy bum. And then also itchy feet, and that'll often manifest as just as a dog who licks their feet a lot or even chews at their nails. So people think it's habitual. They think, oh, he's always chewed his nails. He's always had just itchy feet. The answer is no. That's not just him. That's a manifestation of his allergy. And when we give you the treatment for the ears, all of these other problems will go away too. An important point just on the point of treatment: when your vet gives you eardrops, you have to think a little bit about the anatomy of dogs' ears and how it differs from ours. We have, as human beings, we've got really short ear canals, so it's very easy to get down and put your medications in and get your medication to the bottom. In dogs, their ear canals are very much longer than ours. So their ear canals go sort of down, and then they make a 90-degree turn and go in. So when you're trying to get drops in, you've got to remember that the ear canal goes down and then in. So what I suggest to people is take the ear and pull it up. So take the flap of the ear and pull it up like that. What that's trying to do is take this 90-degree turn ear canal, and by pulling the ear flap up, you sort of turn it into more of a curve going right down to the eardrum at the bottom. And when you put the nozzle in, remember that when you're beginning, the ear canal may be swollen shut, so it'll look like that. So you just can't get the nozzle in, or you can get it in a little bit, but it's only going to treat the top of the ear canal. That will then relax that bit, but now that bit's still shut. So you put more drops in and relax and relax and relax until, bang, you can see all the way down to the eardrum. Obviously not daylight like I'm showing there, but you'll see down to the eardrum. So if you can see all the way down, the idea when you apply the medications is to put the eardropper in, put the nozzle of the eardropper, which is usually only about an inch long, so 15-20 centimeters, which is in all but the really tiny dogs, like a tiny Chihuahua, which is fine to put that whole nozzle. People are worried that they're going to burst the eardrum and push it too far. The answer is no. Their ear canals are extremely long, and you want that nozzle. Don't force it, but just sort of pull the ear up like that, find the opening, and sort of drop it in there. And you want the whole nozzle of the eardropper to go in. So as deep as it'll go without forcing it, and then give it a big squeeze and pull it out, and then rub the ear underneath here. Try and feel the cone. Remember we said the ear canal is sort of a cone going down. Try and get your fingers, if you imagine that's the ear canal, try and get your fingers around the cone so that you can sort of squeeze it and milk it down. So I normally put the dropper in, give it a squirt. Some vets and some manufacturers will say, put 2 or 3 drops in, or 4 or 5 drops in, or a quarter of a mil, or a third of a mil. I ignore all that. I put the nozzle as deep as it'll go, give it a good squirt so that when you rub the ear here, you can see the drops squelching around. If you can see the drops squelching around, you've got enough in. Then change your rub to sort of a milking down. So you grab the ear canal, the cone of it, and just gently milk down and squeeze. So like a milking action. Get it into the bottom. The dog will go, ugh, the first few times you do it because it is uncomfortable. But within 24, 48 hours, the medications, because most of these eardrops have anti-inflammatories in them nowadays, will have massively relieved their pain, and they will very quickly cop on to the fact that you applying this medication, which was pain from the beginning, leads to relief and comfort, and they'll become much more compliant. Of course, you get some dogs, you can't get anything into their ears for love or money. Sometimes it's just they're grumpy. Other times it's just they've had ear problems for so long, they're just super hypersensitive about ear pain. And you're just really going to struggle doing it at home, or you just don't have enough hands. In those cases, we do have products that we can put in at the vets, which last for about a week at a time, so an antibiotic drop, but you've got to come back then so we can do it again in a week again. But remember, that's just clearing the infection, and the infection is like the mildew in your bathroom. It's symptomatic of the problem. It's not the problem. So if you can identify that there's an underlying allergy, which there will be 97-98% of the time, address that problem, you will massively improve your dog's quality of life. You will massively improve your relationship with them. Just everything about it is great. So why wouldn't you do it? So take another look at your dogs. If you've had recurrent ear infections or just recurrent ear problems or ear inflammations, have a look in there. If it looks like it's swollen shut and you can't see a clear hole down there, particularly if it smells like old socks, and particularly if it's red and inflamed, and the skin looks quite bobbly like boot leather rather than smooth skin, either just inside the ear flap or in the actual hole, then your dog has had a long-term problem. It's taken months and months, sometimes years, for it to get as bad as it is, and you really need to take a more holistic approach and get that sorted out in liaison with your vet. So again, the ears are symptomatic of allergy, and the allergy is often a bigger picture than that because there are other parts of the skin affected, but I think we'll tackle that a different time. I think the take-home message today is if you are getting more than, say, 2, certainly 3 ear infections a year, 1 or both of the ears, then there's an underlying problem in your dog which is unresolved, unaddressed, and by addressing it, you will massively improve his quality of life. Even if you think he's fine in between these episodes, please just try the medication, speak to your vet, and then you be the judge of how much better he is in what would have been the in-between times, but hopefully that will mean you have a few, probably hoping to never have an ear infection again. I think that's optimistic. Excuse me, in the same way that if you're asthmatic and you're very, very well controlled, or you've got hay fever, you've got very well controlled, that doesn't mean you're never going to be wheezy or snotty again. But if you're on the right long-term medications and on the right management, your wheezy and snotty episodes really should be far and few between, rather than a constant feature of your life. And for dogs, it's exactly the same. If you are controlling these guys well, you haven't cured them. You've managed them, and that management will need to be almost certainly lifelong, but the benefits are huge. Now, obviously, all this talk about dogs, my cat has gotten fed up. I'll just get her to say goodbye. Or not, or not. Being a cat, she's just run down the corridor, and that's the end of it. So, hopefully we'll get some more episodes going. Please send in any ideas you might have or topics you want me to discuss to nicothevet@gmail.com, and hopefully we can compile a whole list of these which are an easy reference for everyone, and sometimes I think probably even we'll revise them. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.